When a new operator walks up to a machine, there's several things they need to take into consideration. The first being the chassis. With all these chassis being CDL type vehicles, you need to make sure that you go through your CDL checklist, which includes checking all your tires, your lug nuts, as well just basically everything that is included on the CDL driver's test. That's step number one. The second thing you need to take into consideration is all the fluid levels for both the chassis and the sweeper. That includes the chassis oil level in the diesel engine, the transmission, power steering, coming back to your DEF tank level for your diesel exhaust fluid for the chassis, as well as the diesel exhaust fluid for the sweeper engine, as well as your hydraulic fluid levels and auxiliary engine fluid levels. Additionally, on top of that, you need to look at the air filters on both the chassis with your primary and secondary air filters and your auxiliary engine primary and secondary air filters, which each of those air filter housings have a air filter filter minder on them which will tell you the status of those filters. With regards to the inside the cab, from an operational perspective, we've got our control console mounted in the center of the cab. The control console is accessible from either driving station, meaning it'll rotate right to left. With a lever down at the bottom, you pull the lever back and that console will rotate to either driving station. It helps considerably from an ergonomically effect as for getting your arm in the right position, okay? On the console, we have an LCD readout, LCD screen. That screen includes a complete gauge package. Includes your engine temperature, hydraulic temperature, your dust suppression level, as for water capacity level, voltage. It also includes a readout for the pressure bleeder or the leaf bleeder on the fan housing. It's also got all the switches in 3 rows. That includes all the water system switches, lighting switches, as well as all the hydraulic switches to control the various parts of the sweeper. Last, there's a joystick on the console for dumping, where you can raise and lower the hopper, as well as open and close the rear door from inside the cab. On the console, with all the switches on there, it will become second nature, as the way you can set this sweeper up is you can turn on each gutter broom, turn on your sweeping head, water, lighting, and at that point you're using one button moving forward as a one button operation throughout the day. Walking further on down, we have the gutter brooms. On the Schwarze A7, the A8, and the A9, we utilize the same gutter broom design on all 3 units. It's a trailing arm design type broom. The broom has several key features on it. One of them includes a in-cab controlled hydraulic tilt capability that allows you to tilt the broom up to 27 degrees, enabling the broom to get down into the deep curbing gutters and efficiently transfer the material in front of the head for a more efficient cleanup. There's also a electric actuator inboard of the gutter broom arm that has an electric linear actuator control from in the cab that allows you to control the natural lateral extension. We call that gutter broom extension override. So when you hit the switch to put this broom out, this spring will automatically take over and position this broom laterally. But you're able to use the switch as the operator and move this broom in either 1 inch, 3 inches, 5 inches, or swing it in all the way underneath the truck, and allows you to scrub, agitate material prior to the air blast to increase your pickup efficiency. Some other features of the gutter broom are the recessed disc down in the spinner. There's a couple of positive things to this recessed disc. One, if you encounter string or twine, it's going to wrap around the outside of the spinner plate instead of around that pump, which could cause a premature seal failure of the pump itself. Additionally, with it being lowered and open, when you wash it at the end of the day, water does not accumulate and also cause a premature seal deterioration of that pump shaft. Next, the pump itself is a high-speed torque motor, but what it does, what it has as standard is a 2-year, 2,400-hour warranty, which is double what any other manufacturer offers as standard. Now, with regards to flexibility, these brooms are designed, if you hit an immovable object, they'll retract in 15 inches so you won't damage the broom. They're connected up to the gutter broom bracket via this U-joint with a grease zerk that you grease once every 120 hours, in order to keep that flexibility of that gutter broom arm. We also have an LED light for nighttime operation. There's 2 nozzles that spray water for dust control for each gutter broom, but there's also a 3rd nozzle that is hooked to the front axle, so when you turn the switch on in the cab, it's going to activate not only these 2 nozzles, but also the nozzle on the left side of the front axle, which is spraying forward to keep the fugitive dust levels down and keep the dust from coming forward to get into your radiator. We've got our water capacity. Now this particular truck is set up with additional water capacity. The standard water capacity for an A7, an A8, or an A9 is going to be 250 gallons, which snakes down through the engine power module. This particular truck has an additional 350 gallon tank, which gives us right at 600 gallons of water. We also have the capability of adding an additional 100 gallon tank in the rear, so you could take it up to over 700 gallons of water. Now, the difference between the 2 trucks with regards to water capacity is going to be wheelbase. This particular truck is a 184-inch Freightliner M2. If we were to have just a 250 gallon water capacity and eliminate this additional tank, this whole power module would move forward. The gutter brooms would come up under the chassis itself. The fuel tank would come back into this area and give us a little bit of shorter configuration, but of course we would have less available water capacity. So there's several different ways we can do that. With regards to the water system, we've talked a lot about various capacities, but the number one thing you need to make sure that you always do is make sure these water tanks always have water in them. If your water system turns off from a low water level, you need to immediately pull over, put water in the unit, and then keep running. Do not run the machines without water. A failure to use water will cause damage, because water, not only while it is controlling the fugitive dust level of the machine, what it's really key is reducing wear. Because as that water, even though you may be spraying it on the ground, it's traveling through the system and coating several key areas to allow those particulates to slide off of those steel areas instead of causing damage. With regards to the gutter brooms and wear, the gutter brooms will adjust automatically with regards to pressure and wear with the way they're designed. The spring on the top of the broom allows you to adjust your down pressure. If you want more down pressure, you'll back off on this eye bolt to allow the broom to come down. Now with new bristles on the sweeper, the way this broom is set up, it's going to adjust automatically in pressure and wear up to about 4.5 to 5 inches of broom material left over. At that point, you want to change the brooms, because if you're any shorter than that and you come in to do a curb, what will happen is you could put this steel disc into the curb and cause damage to the spinner plate itself. Moving on down, we come up to the hydraulic system. The hydraulic system on the Schwarze A7, A8, and A9, first of all, are electric over hydraulic valves. Okay, we have two different valve banks. Each electronic valve additionally has LED DIN connectors, as well as quick disconnect pressure ports underneath the black cap. The total relief pressure on this hydraulic system is set at 2,500 psi throughout. Now the LED DIN connectors right here that are on each one of these valves help you from a troubleshooting standpoint. If you're in the sweeper and let's say a left gutter broom fails, you can turn on the switch and this LED light should come on. If it doesn't come on, you know you have a power problem at that point, and then you can research it to get down to where the issue is. Now, behind that valve bank is a 25-gallon hydraulic tank. That hydraulic tank has a low-level indicator that comes on in the cab. It also has a temperature and sight gauge on the front of the tank. It's got a 10-micron spin-on filter on return for filtration of the fluid system, as well as a shutoff valve in each side. Okay? Now, the fluid that is in that tank needs to be changed at 500 hours, which is the break-in period. At that point, you change the fluid and you change the filter. And after that 500 hours, you're at your extended period of 2,500 hours. When draining the hydraulic tank, there's a remote drain line that, while it's tie wrapped up in here now, will come down to ground level to allow you to drain that hydraulic oil at ground level. To continue with the hydraulic system, the main system is powered by a dual output pump. Okay, each one of these pumps being a dual output, each section has 6.5 gallons per minute of flow, which is given, which each gutter broom is on their own section, giving you that dedicated flow. Having that dedicated flow to each section is going to give you, as an operator, the ability to get in that heavier debris and efficiently transfer that debris in front of the sweeping head for pickup. Inside this box is our CAN bus control system, as well as our busmans for all of our fuses. Now, all the wiring that comes into this control box is all color-coded and hot stamped every 4 inches to help you identify a particular usage, whether being a gutter broom or sweeping head, whatever function. All the fuse blocks are in there as well as the 15-volt constant duty solenoid and the main controller. This box is something you don't want to be opening up and spraying with water. It's closed, it's sealed, and it's sealed for a reason. Now, this particular machine is equipped with an optional high-pressure washdown system. This washdown system allows you to not only wash the sweeper in a remote area using your existing water supply, but it also allows you to clean some remote areas as well. The pump itself is a 2,000 PSI, 5 gallon per minute, hydraulically powered high-pro pump. Coming over here, we have a hose reel with a 50-foot hose on it, which you can put up a 36-inch lance with a trigger similar to what you would see in a car wash type setup. But again, it allows you to clean the sweeper, clean the screens, clean the suction tube in a remote area where you might not have access for that particular work. Another major application of using this hand hose is with the catch basin system on the rear of the sweeper that you'll use to clean out your catch basins and pits. Using this high pressure washdown system allows that system to be much more effective in that application. Moving on, we come back to the fan system of the Schwarze air sweeper. Of course, the A7, the A8, or the A9, we all utilize the same fan. It's a 5-inch wide fan, 32 3/4 inch diameter. The fan itself is a closed face radial type fan, okay? When we talk about closed face, it means it has a front and a back plate. What makes us different is the fact that our blades are a backwards inclined type blade. That right there increases our static pressure as well as CFM output at the same RPMs of our competitors, up to about 20%. Now, the fan itself is constructed of hard-ox steel, and it's balanced to within 1.5 grams on 2 sides. But what you as an operator have to pay attention to is you have to pay attention to this fan with regards to buildup and wear. Because over time, with the fan being a wear part, it is going to wear out, and you'll see the blades taper evenly from the back of the fan itself moving forward to the front of the back plate. When you see that fan getting paper thin at that back plate, start getting a hairline crack, at that point this machine needs to be red tagged, put down, and that fan needs to be replaced. When the fan gets to that point, you're going to notice as an operator a little bit more vibration than what you had when the unit was first delivered. Now, the fan itself is mounted on a 2 1/4 inch diameter shaft that is 3 feet long, coming back here to this 5-groove power band belt. That belt itself is what powers the fan. Now, there are 2 bearings that are mounted in these risers. They're pillar block bearings that you as an operator have to maintain. That includes grease zerks. You'll look at this grease bank up here, which is optional, but these blower bearings are on this top level right here, and it says blower fan bearings every 250 hours. Those bearings are sealed bearings, but yet we put a grease zerk on them to get a little bit longer bearing life out of the bearing. What we require is that you put a 1/4 ounce of grease into each one of those bearings every 250 hours. No more, no less. You want to be very careful over greasing those bearings, because if you over grease them, you will blow the seal on the bearings, and then dust will get on that grease, and when your bearing gets hot, it's going to suck it into the bearing. It's going to destroy the bearing. So it's very key that you maintain that 1/4 ounce every 250 hour grease intervals in order to get the proper bearing life. What we normally tell our customers is tie that fan greasing into the changing of the oil in the auxiliary engine, which is usually around every 250 hours. So put that on the maintenance checklist for the fleet department. Continuing on with the grease points. Of course, we have the 2 grease zerks for the fan bearings, which are every 250 hours. We have the gutter broom U-joints, which I talked about earlier on the gutter brooms at once every 120 hours. We have the rear hopper hinge points, the rear hopper doors, as well as the leaf bleeder doors, which are located back here, that are all greased monthly. But the big plus about this is all the grease points are all located in one area. Your feet are on the ground, so you're not climbing around and greasing anything. And they're all labeled, you know exactly what to do. Another, there are no daily grease points. Your most important thing you can do to this sweeper every day is wash it. Keep it clean, wash it in order to keep your airflow. Your greasing is all set up. It's either 250 hours, every 120 hours, or monthly. Very simple. Continuing with the fan housing itself is constructed of abrasion-resistant steel, but it's got this replaceable wear liner in it that you'll see all these elevator bolts are hooked to. Now, when I talk about an elevator bolt looks like a regular bolt with a nut on it, but it's got a flat head on the top, on the other side of it. What there is a piece of 3/8 corded rubber that is bolted on all around, wrapping around this fan housing it's protecting that housing from abrasion. As an operator, you need to come through here and periodically, I'd recommend at least once a week, come through here and check each one of these bolts. If you find one of these bolts loose, do not tighten the bolt. You need to red tag the machine and down the machine and have that inspected by your fleet department, or go ahead and replace it, because if one of these is loosed, which happens very infrequently, that means, because if you've got, I screwed that all up. Start that up.
If one of these is loose.
If one of these are loose, red tag the machine and down it. Because if it has come loose, it means that elevator head is worn off and that rubber lining is draping down into the fan. And the last thing you want to happen is that liner to hit that fan turning at 2,500 or 3,000 RPMs, because some serious damage will occur. Coming on down the fan housing, we've got our pressure bleeder. Now the pressure bleeder right here allows you to adjust the basic heart of the machine, with the fan being the heart of the machine. It's what's pumping the air, it's what's making it all happen. But this pressure bleeder allows you to adjust the sweeper, the airflow based upon the application. The heavier the debris is, the more closed you want the door. The lighter the debris, the more open you want the door. And there's a digital readout in the cab that allows you to adjust the location of this door and tells you exactly what its position in the cab. Normal sweeping, I would be sweeping with it anywhere from 12 to 18% open. When leaf season rolls around, I'm going to open it up sometimes as much as 60, 65, 70, maybe 75% open. So, because when you open this up, what it does is it creates a starving effect of the suction tube and relieves some pressure on the rubber flaps of the head and pulls the flaps backwards to allow those large piles of leaf to flow right in the sweeper head and up the intake. Okay, so this is very key that you learn how to use this pressure bleeder, because this is going to allow you to, like I said, adjust it to whatever the application is. One setting will not do it all. That's why there's various settings on the door itself. Continuing on with the fan housing. Now, as the fan housing comes down, it is connected to the sweeping head via this 14-inch diameter pressure tube. The pressure tube itself is 3/8 wire reinforced molded rubber. It also has a quick disconnect on the top and the bottom, okay? Having a quick disconnect on top and bottom is a big plus when it comes to removing the sweeping head or when it comes to maintenance. Because when this machine comes in for maintenance, maybe a reflap of the head, we always recommend that the pressure tube and the suction tube are rotated a quarter turn to change the wear point on it. Whereas our competitors, they're up on the housing and you've got to wrestle them off. So it's very simple to move that and turn it. Coming down, there's a abrasion-resistant steel pressure inlet. This pressure inlet, you need to keep an eye on it as an operator. If you see any wear on it, have this taken off and correct it. Moving over here, this machine is equipped with an optional sweeping head deluge system. Very usable feature, and I encourage you to use this feature if your sweeper is so equipped at the end of each day. The big plus to this is it's going to clean out the whole inside of the sweeping head and your suction tube at the end of the day to make your washout a very short process. If your sweeper is not equipped with this, I encourage you to call your local dealer or the Schwarze factory and get this part and upgrade your sweeper. As an operator moving from the fan system all the way down, the things you need to check is, first of all, you need to always make sure your fan bearings are greased every 250 hours. You need to inspect the fan itself and make sure there's no dirt buildup on the blades. If so, wash that off with a high volume of water. You need to check the bolts on the wear liner inside the housing. You need to check the connection on your blast tubes, as well as check your blast transition. And then coming down to the sweeping head, you need to check the sweeping head, the head flaps. There's 2 rubber flaps in the rear. There's a flap just forward of center and then a dust flap up front. This flap just forward of center, as well as the 2 flaps in the rear, should have a 3/8 to a 1/2 inch deflection, which what I mean by deflection is when the sweeper head is in an up travel position, they should be hanging down below this skid 3/8 to a 1/2 inch. At that point, your sweeper head is set properly. What we're looking for is we're looking for a scrape, not a drape, a scrape. So if you slide your fingers underneath here and you feel what is basically a finger's width, that head is set perfectly, okay? Now, when you first put your machine in operation, the sweeping head itself, the carbide skids, you may see some scratches on the pavement. What that's doing, that scratching the pavement's wearing the flux off the bottom of the skids. Give it about 60 hours, it'll wear off, become smooth, and that scratch should go away. If that scratch persists, there are chains located on each corner of the sweeping head that you can adjust in order to take the tension off that head, or the weight, too much weight of that head on the ground, take it off to give it more of a float. So you've got adjustment on the side plates for flap wear, and then you've got adjustment on the head for tension as for floating, okay? Also around the head, we've got water nozzles for dust control, which help kills your fugitive dust. The sweeping head itself is a dual chambered head. When I say dual chamber, what I mean is you have an upper chamber and a lower chamber, and what separates those 2 chambers is a blast orifice. The blast orifice is a slot that's 3/4 of an inch wide at a 45-degree angle. What's happened is the air from this sweeping head, the fan system, is coming down through this pressure tube and pressurizing this upper chamber. And the air is going from the top chamber down to the street through that pressure slot. That's, again, 3/4 of an inch wide, the length of the head at a windrowing angle across the sweeping head, okay? That right there is creating your air blast and transferring that debris. Periodically, you're going to need to remove this pressure tube, check down in there, or look underneath the sweeping head, maybe just crawl underneath there and look, or climb, get it up on a lift and make sure you don't have any obstructions within that blast orifice or damage. The blast orifice itself has a rubber leading edge on it, so if you encounter an immovable object, maybe a crown of the road or a manhole cover, it should pop back, but if you do damage it, you'll notice that it's bent, and then you can have that replaced. If it needs adjustment, there's adjustment back here, bolt in the back, where you can adjust the gap on that blast orifice. Additionally, the sweeping head will sweep in forward or reverse. Now, if you get into the sweeper right now and you put it in reverse with the sweeper operating, the engine is going to derate to an idle, the gutter brooms are going to lift up, and the water system is going to turn off. The head's going to come up as well, of course. Now, you go back into a drive, you hit sweep, it's going to go right back into into an operating position. But you have the ability as an operator to control that. If you want to sweep in reverse, which this sweeper can sweep in reverse, you can back up from here 100 miles away or back, and you're not going to damage that sweeper like our competitors would. You press a button on the console that says SIR, means sweeps in reverse. So when you go into reverse, the gutter brooms will come up, but the engine will stay at a full idle, your water system will stay on, and the head will stay down. The advantage there is when you're going down the curb line and you hit some really heavy debris and you notice in your camera system that you left some debris, you can kick it in reverse, come back, make a second pass, drive, make a third pass, and you never left that curb line. So you can look at it from a production standpoint, or you can look at it from a safety standpoint. Either way, it's a benefit to you on both sides. Now getting back to the debris hopper of the sweeper. The A7 and the A9 tilt the dump like a dump truck, okay? And the number one rule we need to always take into consideration, whether you're an operator, whether you're a safe service tech, or whether you're the guy that washes the sweeper or whatever, you got to look at the safety side of things. Never crawl underneath this hopper unless this safety prop is securely set, okay? In order to set the safety prop when it's normally up, it is up here in this position. You raise the hopper up to a dump position, come in here, lower that, set it down into the position. At that point, it's safe to crawl underneath the sweeper. But never trust that hydraulic system, ever. We want you to come home at the end of the day with all 10 fingers and 10 toes to your family. We don't want to hear any horror stories. Very important. Now, the hopper themselves, on the A7 and A9, they both tilt the dump to a total of a 53-degree dump angle. It's a 48-degree tilt with a 3-degree slope floor. Now the A8, while I talked about the A8 having the same sweep system from fan system to the front of the chassis, the A8 is a little bit different. It's on a scissor lift type dump system with the right side high dump. But looking at the A9, whether it's the A9, the A7, or the A8, we use 10-gauge steel on the roof, the sides, the bulkhead, and the door. We use 3/16 steel on the floor. You have 3 types of steel you can get on the A7 and the A9, whether it's 304 series stainless, 3CR12 stainless, or a carbon type steel. Either type of steel that you utilize, the most important thing you can do to that hopper at the end of the day is you need to wash it. And as I said earlier in the video, again, the most important thing you need to do is wash it, because keeping it clean keeps your airflow moving. Moving back into the hopper with regards to airflow, first of all, you come back in the hopper, we've got these large inspection doors. The inspection doors are here to put bulky material as well as make it easier to clean the sweeper out. Now you'll notice that the inspection doors here have your hinge up here are adjustable. As an operator, if you see that these hinges are becoming loose, you can tighten this bolt right here in order to tighten up the hinge. If the hinges do wear out, they come off with 3 bolts, and you can order the replacement part from your local dealer. Now, looking inside the hopper, with regards to airflow, it's very important again to keep the hopper clean, because that's what makes the airflow. As the material comes in through the intake, water nozzles are spraying across that intake in order to control the dust. And as I said earlier, those water nozzles are not only controlling the dust, they're also about lubrication. That water is moving throughout the sweeper and lubricating those key parts that we talked about earlier, whether it be the blower fan, the blast transition, the blast orifice, the suction tube, lubricating those key areas in order to make those particulates slide off and not cause any damage. So you need to look through here and you look at those nozzles and you make sure they're spraying. Just because you turn the switch on doesn't mean that the water is spraying. So it's your job as an operator to go back there and check those nozzles and make sure that they're functioning properly. Now, as the material comes in and goes through the nozzles, the heavy debris will fall and the lighter air debris will come up through that separator screen. That separator screen will clean out the majority of the debris, but then the fine particulates come up through there into this centrifugal dust separator. At which time we're using that centrifugal force to remove those fine particulates from that airflow and put that clean air back into the fan. Therefore, a regenerative air sweeper. We're using the same air over and over again, but we're using water in a centrifugal dust separator to clean the air prior to ingestion back into the fan. Okay? Now, as you're sweeping, these screens are going to become clogged. And what have I said before? Keep the sweeper clean, okay? You see these screens becoming clogged, get your water hose out and rinse them off. At the end of the day, make sure you wash them, and wash it at the end of the shift. A 5 to 10 minute screen wash off after you're working is a heck of a lot better than 2.5 to 3 hours after you let it dry. Moving on back here to the hopper, we come here to the rear dump door. On the rear dump door on an A9 is a full height, full width dump door. So when you are dumping your debris with the full height door, there's nothing to hold the debris in. So you can pack this sweeper as full as you want with leaves and it's going to eject like a bale, okay? On the A7, it's more of a 3/4 height dump door. so you could get a little bit of restriction if you overpack the sweeper. So pay attention to what you're doing with regards to loading the debris. Additionally, when you're dumping, always make sure the rear door is the first to open and the last to close. So before you raise the hopper, you raise the rear door, raise the hopper and dump, hopper back down, rear door closed. The reason why, when this hopper tilts up, sometimes these locking fingers can come up a bit where if you tried to close the door in a full tilt position, it will hit the hinge and not allow the door to close. To continue on with the A9, first thing we need to talk about is the safety lighting. On a Schwarze sweeper, each sweeper is going to come with either an LED light, whether a bar light, or it's going to come with a strobe light, various lighting packages. It's going to come with rear alternate flashers, as well as your high-level brake lights and low-level brake lights. As an operator, you need to ensure and be sure and check these safety lighting to make sure that they're all working properly in order to make sure that you're safe on the roadway. Moving down here, we have the auxiliary hand hose, which is an option on the A9. This hand hose can be utilized to clean remote areas or clean catch basins, and as we spoke of earlier, you can use the high pressure washdown hose to come around to help accentuate the way that this hose performs. Some of the items to look for on maintenance on this hose: first of all, the hose. You want to make sure that you don't have any cracks on the hose or any tears. If you do, you need to go ahead and replace the hose. Check all the areas where you have your connection points back to the suction nozzle. Make sure that everything is solid. These handles have controls on it for not only up and down if you get the power assisted hand hose, but also has a remote control throttle. Now when this throttle is being used, it locks out the throttle on the main console, so you don't have any chance of the person not using the hose not having complete control. Okay? Also underneath here we have the LED aero board that is also available from Schwarze. This is a traffic guide aero board, and just as the rear alternate flashers on the corners are the LED beacon or bar light on the top, it's also LED. So therefore it's reducing the draw off of the electrical system. But you need to be sure and check this LED aero board, ensure that it's working properly. If there is an issue with the light, be sure and get it replaced from a safety perspective. Also included on the A9 rear door as an option are a couple of really key features. We have the hopper deluge system. This hopper deluge system is a 2-inch cam lock fitting that you can take the same water hose that you use to fill the water system for dust control and use it to clean the hopper at the end of the day. And as I've spoke of several times as we've walked through here today, is keeping this sweeper clean is of the utmost importance. The worst thing about being a sweeper operator is the fact that you have to clean the machine afterwards. Using this 2-inch cam lock fitting with your fire hose hooked to a fire hydrant will clean out the inside of that hopper. It'll get out about 95 to 98% of the material in just a matter of minutes, where you can take your hose and hit the hot spots. So this right here is what's going to keep the sweeper on the road longer throughout the day, but yet make your job extremely easier at the end while cleaning in order to prepare for tomorrow's shift. Further down is an optional 6-inch hopper drain. Now what this allows you to do is it allows you to decant the water out of the sweeper hopper without dumping the sweeper hopper itself. If you're sweeping on a rainy day or just there's a lot of water in the roadway, due to the power of the sweeper, it's going to pick up that water. So you can stop, go into a field area, drop this hose down, and it will decant the water from the hopper, again, without having to dump the debris or make a timely trip to the dump. Moving around the A9, we come around to the other side and we have another inspection door just like we do on the left side of the sweeper. Again, it's got a watertight seal to it with a hinge on it. It's a very large size to allow you to put that bulky items in. But again, with its size, it makes it much easier to clean the sweeper out at the end of the shift. Moving down below the inspection door, we have our toolbox. This rear integral toolbox into the A7 it gives you plenty of room to store your safety flares, your triangle kits, which you have to have for being a CDL vehicle, as well as your water hose, your water fill hose, and your hydrant wrench for your filling your water tanks or cleaning out the sweeper with the hopper deluge, as well as the block off plate that you would put over the intake in order to utilize the rear hand hose. Last, there's an available option of the A9 that's called remote drop down screens. This is also available on the A7. And you've got a remote mounted winch with stainless steel cables and pulleys that allows you to drop these suction screens inside the top of the hopper in order to more efficiently clean out. Continuing with the A9, we get to the suction tube. The suction tube on an A9 is a 14-inch diameter suction tube. It's got 3/8-inch wire reinforced molded rubber suction tube with a quick disconnect on the top and bottom, just as on the pressure side on the other side. Now, you as an operator, what you need to keep an eye on is the wear point on this hose. We talked about on the pressure side earlier to where you want to adjust that wear point on the hose whenever you go in and say change the engine oil every 250 hours. The same thing on this suction tube, because this is where most of your material is coming up. So every, say 250 hours, you want to come in and loosen these clamps, spin this hose a quarter turn in order to change that wear point and extend the life of that tube. Now you come down here to the bottom, below to the lower transition, it's all bolt-on replaceable. Now that means that this is a wear part. Just like the bolt-on replaceable pressure transition on the other side, this lower transition is an area that is going to wear. Over time, you may see a wear part, a thin spot in the front of it. If that's the case, you can unbolt this piece, take it to your fab shop within your organization, or you can order the replacement piece straight from your dealer or the Schwarze factory. Now this piece right here is constructed of AR steel, as is the upper transition up here, as well as the transition going in the hopper. And again, they're all bolt-on replaceable and very easy to replace, okay? Now coming back down, there's two water nozzles, one right here, as well as one just on the inside. Each one of those water nozzles will put up to 5.88 gallons a minute of water into that tube. You as an operator can utilize these water nozzles to help flush the tube out when it starts becoming clogged throughout a days of operation. But you need to ensure that they're working. Again, as I've said before, just because you turn a switch on does not mean that that water is functioning. You need to pull these out periodically, make sure they're clean, make sure they are spraying water in order to efficiently utilize the feature. Coming down to the skid on this side, just as on the other, you set it the exact same way. You want that 3/8 of an inch or a finger's width deflection hanging down the skid in the up position. Moving forward to the water system. The water system on the A9, first of all, it's twin diaphragm type pumps. Each pump has an output maximum of 5.88 gallons a minute at 125 PSI. We've got the relief on these pumps set at 60 PSI. As an operator, what you need to keep an eye on is this pre-filter on this machine that filters the water prior to the pump. Daily, you need to come in, and really sometimes more than daily. What I would recommend that you come in here and you clean this stainless steel water filter every time you put a load of water in this sweeper, because you never know what kind of material is going to come out of that fire hydrant. And if you clog this filter up to a 60% restriction, it's going to activate this restriction indicator and shut your water system off and give you an audible visual alarm in the cab. But again, when it starts getting a restriction, what you're doing is you're pulling a vacuum on the head of that pump and causing stress to the water pumps of the system. So it's very key that you clean this water filter out at a minimum daily. I recommend every time you get a load of water. Now these pumps, they supply all the water pressure to all of your water system, whether your front spray bar, your hopper water, your gutter brooms, your front axle, around your sweeping head, inside your nozzle. And again, this water is not only dust control for your fugitive dust, but it's lubrication that coats some of these wear items through the system to keep those damaging particulates from damaging that material and extending the life of the sweeper overall. Up in the very front of here is your water spray bars. Now what we utilize is what's called a Peter Paul agricultural type solenoid valve. Each one of these solenoids, being independent solenoids, allows us to turn the water on independently. So if you just want to run the right gutter broom water, you can just turn on the right gutter broom water, and only one of them will function. The way, if you ever want to know which one it is, get a wrench, turn it on, and hold it to it. It will magnetize to the solenoid. So if you get a solenoid that might have clogged, which will happen, you can figure out which one it is real quick, disassemble the solenoid, pull out the post, spray some WD-40 on it to where the spring actuates freely, put it back in, it'll reseal and keep the water from dripping out of your nozzles. There's also a low pressure, high volume washdown system, which will give you just short of 6 gallons a minute, where you can hook a water hose to, put a little sweeper nozzle on the end or a pistol grip nozzle, where you'll get similar water pressure to what you would get out of a hose bib on your house. Additionally, there are Schrader valves on each one of these water valves that allow you to purge the water from the system during freezing conditions. You would go in the hopper, turn the key on the console, turn on every water switch, come out, hit the air chuck to the Schrader valve, and it will blow all the water out of all the water lines, out of the pumps, to where you protect the system from any freezing damage during winter. Very key that you do utilize that, because replacing a pump can get very expensive. Okay, moving on up here, we get up to the auxiliary engine. Now the auxiliary engine, whether it's a Schwarze A7, A8, or A9, is a John Deere 134 horsepower engine as standard. We do offer a Cummins option at 130 engine, but the most prevalent is the John Deere. This John Deere comes standard with a 5-year, 5,000-hour warranty on the engine and emissions. But some of the things you need to keep an eye on as for maintenance on this thing, on this engine, first of all, is your engine oil. Daily, check the engine oil and from the John Deere, and you check it right there. Not only is that the oil fill when you change the oil, but it's also the dipstick. You'll unscrew that, check your engine oil, okay? Additionally, you have the air cleaner. The air cleaner here is a dual element Donaldson type air cleaner. You need to make sure you check this air cleaner periodically. And the way you do that is you look at the filter minder. And it could be a filter minder that's mounted on the front of the housing, or your customer might have picked, or your boss might have picked the optional in-cab filter minder mounted inside the cab. You want to monitor that filter minder. When it pops solid and it's red, it's time to clean that filter. But one thing you have to remember is a dirty air filter can damage a turbo. It can also damage an engine. You've got to keep an eye on this as being a sweeper operator, because this air filter is going to get dirtier, much cleaner than the average truck. But another thing is, not cleaning an air filter can be just as bad as over cleaning an air filter. So utilize your restriction indicator. Make sure that you service that air cleaner whenever that filter minder is dirty. Up on the radiator, there's a pusher type fan on the radiator that pushes air through the radiator fan and through this air to oil hydraulic cooler. Make sure that that radiator is free of debris. If you've got any grass, leaves, or whatever debris on there, get a broom and brush it and then spray it off. Do not take high pressure and go right into it, because you'll impact dirt into the fins, which could over time cause an overheating situation with the auxiliary engine. Okay? Moving on back forward, we've got our water fill. And the water fill for the A9, this particular machine is equipped with the additional 350-gallon tank, giving us 600 gallons of water. In order to fill the water, you'd hook your fire hose to this 2-inch cam lock fitting to the fire hydrant, and it'll fill from this tank and filter down over the other tank. If you just have the standard 250-gallon, your water fill will be located right here, and that will fill the 250-gallon tank. Again, utilize this water not only as fugitive dust control, but also for lubrication in order to extend the life of the key components within the sweeper. Moving down here to the right gutter broom, just as the left, 44-inch diameter, recessed gutter broom, torque motor. You want to be sure and check for string or twine that might have wrapped around the outside, or if for some reason any string, twine, or wire got around that pump motor, make sure you get that off, okay? Check your water nozzles for dust control setting. Check your lights, make sure that they're operating properly as we talked about earlier, and check your gutter broom speeds. At this point, that's going through the maintenance of an A9 in order to get set up and go out and sweep. Let's now talk about the startup process of the Schwarze A9 Monsoon, as well as the A7 and the A8, being that the control systems are very similar. First of all, what you have to do, being a CAN bus system, is you're going to have to come in and create power for the console via the chassis. So you have to start the chassis in order to get power. So you start the chassis, turn it on, make sure that your gauges go back and forth, that the the chassis computer system properly boots. At that point, you start the chassis, get it started, and then come back here to the auxiliary engine control panel. Now this auxiliary engine control panel, it rotates to either driving station. We're going to leave it centered so you can get a better idea while we're doing our video. You come in, and you come into the auxiliary engine key, and you start the auxiliary. Start it up, let it come up to an idle, and at that point you'll notice on the LCD screen we have a complete readout of the RPM, of our engine temperature, our oil pressure, our DEF tank level, which is our diesel exhaust fluid level for the auxiliary engine itself. We have our hydraulic temperature, our water level for our dust control in a percentage, as well as a load weight indicator to tell us how much material we have in the hopper based on volume. We have the RPM control, whether turtle slow, rapid fast. Each time you hit that RPM, either up or down, it will go either up or down in 100 RPM increments. Here we have the SIR button, which allows you to sweep in both forward or reverse. So if you want to sweep in reverse with the head down and RPMs up and not go into a standby when you go in reverse, you press this button. When it lights up solid, you have your sweep in reverse activated. You can go back into the maintenance screen here, and you have the various hour meters. You have your auxiliary engine hour meter, left gutter broom hour meter, right gutter broom hour meter, sweeping head hour meter, and then an hour meter for each water pump. Now each one of the hour meters for the water pumps, the head, and the gutter brooms are resettable to allow you to track that hour's usage of not only maybe on a shift, but as well as, say, if you want to know how many hours you're getting out of a broom. When you change that broom or change the head flaps, you can track that and turn that into management. Okay. There's also down here, we've got input controls. If you want to check your input, which would be power from the console to the controller, you can go down to outputs here, checking power from the controller to the particular function to tell if you're getting power to those functions. Then you come down here to your CAN switch banks. You want to know if a switch is good? You come down here. If you hit the switch and it changes color on the LCD screen, you know that switch is good. If it does not change color, that switch is bad. So it helps you from a troubleshooting standpoint. Then coming down, you've got timer set points as for broom raise and lower, calibration, and then engine trouble codes for your auxiliary engine to tell you if you're having any issues with your John Deere engine. At that point, you've checked all that out, you come back, now you're ready to go to a sweep. Well, the first thing you do is you come to this console and you notice this red light is blinking, but you looked up top here and it says press standby to enable sweeper functions. What that's telling you that this console is locked. Nothing will work until you press this button. You press that button, what it does is it power. Now the sweeping system is powered, okay, where you can utilize the console. The first thing you do is you come in here and you drop your sweeping head down. Then you come down and you drop down your gutter broom. You might just drop down the right broom. You may drop down both brooms depending on what application that you're in. You can adjust your tilt to allow your gutter broom to tilt for the curb and gutter. You can also adjust your geo, gutter broom extension override, which is going to adjust that lateral positioning of the gutter broom arm itself. Come in here, turn on your safety lighting, which would be your rear strobe here, your rear alternate flashers. Come here to your arrow board, which you have pass both side controls here, caution control on that side, pass right or pass left. In this instance, we're going to go ahead and turn caution on, so we've got a caution going for both sides. So we've got our safety lighting on, we've got our gutter brooms on, our sweeping head down. Now we're going to come to water. On the water system controls, we've got our high pressure washdown, which is for the optional high pressure washdown system with 50-foot hose. Then we've got our hopper water, our left gutter broom water, right gutter broom water, sweeping head water, front bumper spray bar, hopper spray bar, and then the intake water. That intake water are the two large nozzles that are in the intake that I talked about earlier for flushing out that system. Now, you'll notice each one of these switches as well, they've all got international symbols, but they're also labeled to tell you what the switches are. So it should be very clear for you to figure out. At first, you're going to be kind of jumping around, but after a couple of days of operation, it'll become second nature of where you reach over to hit those switches. When you go to operate, first thing you want to do is you want to turn on the hopper water.
okay? The hopper water should be running at all times when you're operating this sweeper, okay? As I said on a couple of occasions while walking around the sweeper, that hopper water is not only fugitive dust control, it's also lubricating key parts within the sweeper. Having the hopper water on as the air is moving through is going to come back into the fan, coat that fan, coat the fan housing, coat the blast transition, the blast orifice, as well as the intake coming in order to reduce that abrasion damage and extend the life of the key components. After that, you'll turn on whatever gutter broom water you're using. If you start producing more dust, go to the sweeping head, and then at that point you can go to your hopper water, intake, front spray bar, whatever it takes in order to control that water level. To get that all set, come up to your RPMs. You'll set this RPMs to where your operating RPMs are going to be really anywhere from about 1600 RPMs up to 2500 RPMs. On average, most of your operation will be between 1800 and 2000 RPMs, which is plenty of power in pretty much any application that you're going to encounter. Now, once you have been operating the sweeper, you've been operating all day, you're going down and you may come to the end of an area you've been sweeping, you may get a call from the boss on the radio says, I need you to come over to another area. If that happens, all you have to do is come over and hit this one button. You press standby. At that point, you press standby, that engine, auxiliary engine, will derate to an idle, the sweeping head will come up, the gutter brooms will come up, your water system will turn off, but your safety lighting will stay on. You travel over to the next area you're going to sweep, and then you press the button that says sweep. You hit that button, the head goes back down, the RPMs of the engine go up, your gutter brooms go back down, and your water turns back on, and you're immediately operating. So you may look at this console and see a lot of switches here. Don't worry, it's for initial setup. At that point, you're operating from one switch moving forward. So it's very simple, a really high ease of operation on this sweeper. At that point, that's it.